Artificial intelligence is not going to replace the workforce. Absolutely not. I think whatever jobs AI gets rid of completely, it's going to replace and create even more jobs. But that's not to say, as we talked about, that AI will most certainly have a disruptive effect in existing jobs and require certain changes to take place. Organizations are going to have to rewrite job descriptions, reimagine what people do for them, and they're going to have to do that very quickly. And as they go about doing that exercise, they had better have a really good partner in their MSP. Otherwise, that's going to be an incredibly challenging endeavor to tackle by themselves. Better to have your MSP helping you with that than figuring this out on your own. That would be a very, very lonely position to be in. Welcome back to the MSP Zone. I'm your host, Charles Weaver. Today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. Again, don't change the channel though. It's going to be a different take on AI than I think you've ever heard before. If you're anything like me and you follow technology news, even non-tech news today, you can't miss what I'm about to talk about. Every headline, every panel discussion, every keynote seems to come back to the same topic: AI and what it's going to do to jobs. How is AI going to impact the job market? How many people is it going to displace? How many industries is it going to wipe out and decimate the entire workforce? Like really earth-shattering, cataclysmic stories. Most of that, by the way, I think is overhyped, and probably most of it is inaccurate or just wrong. But I think the conversation misses another point, and that is not whether AI is going to change the workforce, because we already know that that's happening. AI is absolutely changing the workforce globally speaking. The question is what happens to work itself, and who helps organizations navigate those changes when it happens faster than they're capable of handling it. And that's where I believe MSPs are about to matter more than ever, because MSPs historically come from a place where they've only dealt with technical issues, and that's the role that, maybe they believe themselves they're only capable of serving the technical function in life. But I'm here to say that I don't believe that. I think that the role of the MSP was always destined to become far greater than that of just a technology advisor, but becoming more of a business advisor. I've used this term many times in the past, and it's very applicable to today's question about AI and workforce disruption. The role of the MSP, the evolution of the MSP, moving from data center into the boardroom, into the executive suite, is precisely what I'm talking about. And it is that evolution that will allow MSPs to become vital to solving this AI workforce disruption issue. Let's dive right in. So, number one, the workforce is changing, just not the way I think the headlines and the mainstream press are claiming it's changing. Let's start with the labor market. If you look at past research, and like recent research through MIT, Yale, Brookings Institute, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, all of which I'll put in the show notes, links to all of those research studies, and don't take my word for it. Read it for yourself, come to your own conclusions. But if you look at all of these studies, they're roughly saying the same thing, which is AI isn't wiping out entire jobs overnight. What it is doing is reshaping the tasks inside those jobs very, very quickly. So the roles are not disappearing, they're just being reshaped. They're being reassembled, redefined in many ways. You're having routine cognitive work that is getting automated. You're having analysis and decision support that's getting augmented by AI. But most critically, judgment, accountability, and context, those will always remain within the human element. AI is not going to be able easily or effectively to replace any of those elements. And that's a very good thing for people, and it's a very good thing for MSPs. But it creates a problem. It creates a problem for employers, because pace of change inside many of these organizations is greater than those organizations can handle and keep up with. And I'll explain what I mean. You may have productivity go up because of AI adoption. You may have automation. You may have a lot of good things that come out of adopting AI. But you're also going to have clarity, or clarity as a function of what does a person or a department do in a particular organization. That, I think, is going to go down, because as AI enters into the workplace, the people who still work there are going to be left with, okay, that 25% of that job I used to do, now I don't do it anymore. An AI bot or an AI tool or platform does that for me. That's going to have a major impact on the roles, definitions, the pay, and other types of things related to all workforce. Job descriptions that used to be stable for years on end are now going to become quickly out of date in months, not years. So teams are going to be told, hey, you got to use this AI tool. The team doesn't make a choice to whether or not to use it. They're going to be faced with, right, there's an AI tool. I never picked this. I have no idea what to do with it. And they're being told to go make it work. These are really friction-filled choices that are being made. They're causing a lot of friction. And that's where I think you're seeing a lot of this negativity and a lot of the doomsday people talking about what AI is going to do to the stock market, what AI is going to do to the workforce, and all those types of things. Friction at scale becomes risk. And that's the main thing. Friction is real and it must be addressed. Otherwise, it's going to get out of hand and it's going to have a very real negative impact. Moving on. Why is the old workforce playbook not really working anymore? Well, traditionally, when companies handled change, they handled it in three fundamental ways. Number one, they hired new skills, right? If you don't have the people, you have the skill set that you need in order to perform a service or make a product, you hire. That's number one. Or they trained existing employees. You take your existing staff and you upskill them and you make them capable of doing the thing that you need done. Or third, you outsourced. Organizations could clearly outsource very defined functions to other third parties, contractors, and that was the third way to deal with kind of change where you can't keep up with the pace of change. AI, however, breaks all three of those kind of tried and true elements. Hiring can't move fast enough. Training programs, are going to kind of lag behind the tools because these AI tools are so fast, and so the pace of their change is so dramatically different than what we've ever seen from a human standpoint. The classic outsourcing model, even, right, and pre-MSP, these are built on labor arbitrage and fixed scopes, and these generally don't map well to AI-enabled work. So what organizations actually need right now isn't more people. They need operational intelligence. And organizations are asking kind of these three fundamental questions. Where should AI automate versus assist only? How do humans and machines share responsibility safely? And who owns the quality, security, and compliance when decisions are partially automated? Very critical question. That gap between those elements, between technology and real world operations, is exactly where the MSP enters and plays a vital role. Which brings me to my next point. MSPs are becoming intelligence partners, not just labor substitutes. Managed services has been changing for a while. We all know this. We see it in the data, we see it in the field, we see it in feedback from MSPs themselves. Delivery models are getting lighter on labor and heavier on outcomes, automation, and orchestration. And that shift changes the MSP's role in some really critical ways. Number one, MSPs acting as kind of translators. Most AI failures don't come about because of technical failures. They're integration failures. They're organizations that failed to fit AI into a real workflow, into a real team environment, and hold it accountable in a real, meaningful way. MSPs sit in a very unique position to be able to bridge the gap between executives and systems, to be able to bridge the gap between humans and AI bot agents or agentic AI agents. They sit in between policy, intent, and operational reality, right? So they play this very critical bridge, this gap filling bridge between critical elements that previously have been disjointed and with AI are becoming even more separate. That, I think, is a very critical role. The MSP as a translator, as a gap bridge. Number two, MSPs as kind of shock absorbers to this system of organizations that are dealing with this massive amount of disruptive change. So AI doesn't hit every role quite the same way. It's not very even. You have some that accelerate, some that destabilize, some that disappear. I'm talking about jobs. But MSPs provide kind of a business elasticity that really cannot be found in any other profession anywhere on the planet today. MSPs let organizations scale capability without really any immediate disruption, which is to say that they absorb volatility during a transition period. How do they do that? They give an internal team time to reskill instead of being displaced overnight by coming in and providing people, technology, process, that which never existed or didn't exist at scale inside the organization. They can provide that elastic benefit by being an outsourced organization coming in and providing, again, not that data center technical role, but providing that more business function role that really gives that organization a lot of breathing room to be able to deal with a difficult period where they're going through massive internal change. Third, MSPs as governors of AI in production. And I'm a big believer in this ongoing role for managed service providers because, as I said earlier, AI is not something that is just going to exist out there and be allowed to run ungoverned, unwatched, unmanaged. It's going to be managed by somebody. And most organizations are not going to have the skill sets required to do that management internally. They may set policy, they may understand at a high level what they want to accomplish, but they may not really have the ability or the people internally to do that at scale. And so enter the MSP, and you have a great example of MSPs capable of acting in a almost governance role over AI technology inside their client organization. Once AI moves from kind of a pilot to a production, the risk profile changes dramatically and very quickly. Security, compliance, bias, data leakage, model drifts, these are all elements that have to be taken into consideration. You're already seeing it in a lot of frameworks. You see it in ISO 42001 as a AI framework talking about AI bias, and are organizations actually thinking about that when they adopt AI into their organization? This is part of the governance that I'm talking about. And if it doesn't exist at the organizational level, they're going to look elsewhere. And the only place that I can think of right now is turn to your MSP. They will have the answer to that question. Organizations don't just need the AI technology to be deployed, they need it managed. So any concept that MSPs are just going to be installing an AI system and then walking away and they'll never have to deal with it ever again is so short-sighted. It is missing the point completely. MSPs are going to play a much more involved role in the technology of AI. It's not just the deployment, it's not just the preparation for it, it's the ongoing management and the accountability of the AI system inside the client organization that is so vital and so valuable to the client and so valuable to the MSP if they can provide that service. That's not outsourcing, by the way. That is completely separate from outsourcing. That is something entirely different. That's stewardship. That is thought leadership in my book, and puts the MSP organization on a very, very different plane than it used to be even 10, 15 years ago. Next point, the work is moving very quickly outside of the org chart. And here's a shift that I don't think that we're talking about enough. Work that leaves the org chart faster than it previously has. As coordination gets cheaper and automation improves, the company is more willing to buy an outcome instead of a headcount, right? They want to see a particular business outcome rather than say, all right, I'm going to hire a person or a department in order to achieve this. They're far more willing to say, I need speed. I need dexterity. I need a business outcome faster than I can plan for it and train for it myself internally. I'm going to go to the MSP and I'm going to get that business outcome because they can deliver it for me fast. That's a really critical value point that I think people overlook. They can consume capabilities instead of building teams. That's kind of a follow on to that earlier point that I made. And they treat labor as a service, not as a fixed asset. So you have firms like KPMG and Ernst & Young, EY, describe this as the rise of technology-enabled managed services replacing labor-centric delivery models. I get where they're coming from that standpoint. I don't necessarily think of it as a new concept. I think that that's always been the value of managed services. I just think that as applied to an AI scenario, it takes on a much more, a different and a much more valuable role than it previously did. The world of MSPs just supporting IT is gone, right? I mean, that myth has been shattered now irrevocably. This is no longer that era. And now I will say, if you're an MSP and that's all you're comfortable doing, and that fits a good description of where you are in your MSP practice, I would say don't become too comfortable in that. A, it's not going to be around forever. B, you're going to have a rapidly diminishing value to your clients, and it's going to be a real threat to your own survivability as an MSP if you only stay focused on just the technology portion of this. And I suppose that there could be some very clear exceptions to that rule. I won't rule that out, but I think for the vast majority of MSPs, they have to be advancing out of the technology arena and rapidly into the business arena, as we discussed. They have to become extensions of the enterprise. They have to become operators of hybrid human AI workflows and managers of skills that don't necessarily sit on the payroll. That really changes how, at least I think about career paths and job descriptions and how MSPs go about their hiring. It changes how organizations go about their hiring. And these things are going to be really interesting and important to watch and monitor over the next coming months and years. And that brings me to my final point. What should business leaders take away right now from this? Specifically, what does this mean if you're leading a business or an MSP today? Number one, AI strategy is workforce strategy. You can't look at AI and not consider its impact on your team. You have to be looking at it. And I think if you're only looking at it as, I need to bring on AI to displace or to get rid of a job, I think that that's short-sighted. I think you have to look at, what does AI do to improve my existing headcount? What does it do to make them more productive? What does it do to make them more valuable to the company? What does it do to make them, as an employee, more effective at generating revenue for the organization, right? Very different questions and very different statements than simply, how can I cut cost? I think if you're looking at AI as a cost-cutting measure, you're missing a major element of the value of AI. Second, MSP selection is quickly becoming a strategic decision and not a procurement exercise. The right partner, right? I've been talking about this not just in this episode, but for so many years. The right MSP partner doesn't just reduce cost, they reduce uncertainty. And that gets to the future workforce is going to change. And it's going to change in the sense that it's going to evolve rapidly in what it does, and not necessarily just in terms of getting rid of jobs, but just changing, modifying how existing titles and job descriptions change, because they're going to change as AI creeps further and further into the organization. You're going to have, I think, a blended workforce scenario where you're going to have full-time employees, you're going to have AI systems, and you're going to have MSP teams working on the outside with the organization at the C-suite level. And those three kind of elements are going to be really critical to adapting rapid change AI technology in the modern day work environment. So, to close, artificial intelligence is not going to replace the workforce. Absolutely not. I think whatever jobs AI gets rid of completely, it's going to replace and create even more jobs. But that's not to say, as we talked about, that AI will most certainly have a disruptive effect in existing jobs and require certain changes to take place. Organizations are going to have to rewrite job descriptions, reimagine what people do for them, and they're going to have to do that very quickly. And if, as they go about doing that exercise, they had better have a really good partner in their MSP. Otherwise, that's going to be an incredibly challenging endeavor to tackle by themselves. I'm just saying, better to have your MSP helping you with that than figuring this out on your own. That would be a very, very lonely position to be in. MSPs are, in my opinion, emerging right now as the connective tissue between human capability and machine intelligence. And this does not mean job destruction. It doesn't mean MSPs are outsourcing people's jobs. That's not what I'm talking about. MSPs are going to become the architects of how work actually gets done. In the years ahead, that role, I think, is going to matter more than any single technology that we've ever created. It's going to fundamentally change how MSPs operate and are viewed, and it's going to evolve MSPs faster and into greater heights than we've ever imagined, greater than perhaps I had ever imagined. Thanks for listening. Give us a like. And if this episode got you thinking, if it is something that is thought-provoking to you, share it with a colleague. And we'd always love your thoughts. But stay safe. Good luck. Until next time.